Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. You've been praying for a long time, but it's not over.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group, this time with a special edition, doing something we haven't done in a while, and that is go on location live. We have with us today someone you might have heard on YouTube if you haven't bought her album already. She's a Stella Award-winning gospel artist, and is Miss Amethyst. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
It's good to be here. Good to see you. We haven't had this conversation in a while, talking about music and talking about the things that really are passionate, that you're passionate about. You have an album coming out.
Yes, it's actually out.
It's out. Okay.
It's out.
No, this
so
is
excited.
you took something that's going to be really important to you because this has a special meaning. This album.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So the album took about a 6-year process to come into fruition, and I started off this journey with my sister. We were singing since the ages of 3 and 4 years old, and I started off as the Moye Singers, and we would sing around the city of Chicago and even multiple states in the United States. And the journey started with her, but the journey did not end with her. I lost my sister a year and a half ago to sarcoma tumor, and between diagnosis and transition, it was only 6 months. And so it's very special. I fell apart and I crumbled, but I had to remember my assignment. And I remember some of the last words that my sister imparted. And she said, go full in and go full throttle. Finish your assignment, finish your destiny. She finished hers. And so I had to finish mine. So this album is dedicated to the memory of my sister, Angeline.
Wow. And she was a person that people really appreciated her, not just for her voice, but the fact that she was so full of life.
Oh, yeah.
And she was a life of the party. She was the type of person that would light up a room. And I think that's really amazing that you actually took that time to remember her through song.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. Now, we also have a couple of guests with us from the National Sarcoma Foundation. We have Tasha Nathan, and also we have Brandy Fessler. How you guys doing today?
Great. Glad to be here. Yeah.
So what was that? I couldn't hear you.
Thank you for having us.
Tell us, what is sarcoma?
So sarcoma is actually a rare cancer of the connective tissues and of the bone. It only occurs in about 1% of adults and 15 to 20% of children, although it is a leading form of cancer for childhood cancers. Because of its rarity, one thing that's important to know about sarcoma is it can happen anywhere in the body, and it spans all age groups. But one thing that's very unique about sarcoma is late diagnosis is often happens, and it's not uncommon. And people won't find out that they have sarcoma till very late, and diagnosis can take years. And unfortunately, many people are diagnosed at the late stage. And so because it's also a rare cancer, it lacks treatment options, and resources and awareness. And it is considered a very lonely and lethal disease.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about, what are some of the people that can develop this type of cancer? What are the characteristics, of any? Are there certain types of demographics that are affected by this?
Not really. It spans all different demographics. And again, it spans all different age groups. The median age is younger, around 40 years old. But I think that's also skewed because we have pediatric involved in that as well. But we do have a very young population of people who are diagnosed with sarcoma. And so again, it can be anybody and it can be any age. And depending on the subtype. So one thing about sarcoma that's also very unique is that sarcoma has, according to the World Health Organization, over 100 different histologic subtypes, which means you essentially have sarcoma as the umbrella, but you could have 100 different types of the cancer inside. So, and how you are treated and the demographics are based on the subtype that a person is diagnosed with. And so there is no link necessarily to genetics. There's real no link to why people get. There are some risk factors, but there's no real link as to why people get sarcoma.
So one of the things I've noticed too is that in the military, people talk about toxic exposure, and that's been used to link a lot of veterans to certain types of sarcomas as well. Can you tell us about that a little bit, Tasha?
Yeah. So toxic exposure is certainly something that we pay attention to in the sarcoma world. Brandy actually has a lot of experience talking about this, so I'll pass it to her. But there's not necessarily, it's definitely something that is needing a lot more research in terms of the direct subtypes related. I'll let Brandy kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so there is some risk factors involved with sarcoma that include toxic exposure to herbicides and things. There is some information that there could be a connection to certain soft tissue sarcomas due to Agent Orange. But one thing that's important when you think about the military population is that the demographics of sarcoma, skewing younger, also overlay with a younger population when you think of the military population. So when you think of the risk factors of sarcoma being exposure to radiation, exposure to some toxic chemicals, and also injury. There is a risk factor of injuries that can lead to sarcoma. So there is some risk factors that actually overlay with the military population, even outside of just exposure to toxic chemicals. But they haven't made a direct connection. From a sarcoma standpoint, I think there's still research lacking and the toxic chemical exposure. I know it doesn't include bone or Kaposi sarcoma, which actually has a connection to HIV and AIDS. They have made that connection. But because soft tissue sarcoma is so broad and lacks a lot of research, I think they haven't been able to be very specific, but there are some research has been done to show that there is a connection to toxic chemicals. But again, more importantly, radiation, injury, and a lower age group for a population really overlays with the military population.
So one of the things that I think about a lot when I think about military veterans is the PACT Act. So the PACT Act was passed recently. And what that did was it opened up a lot of research for people to get more information about these types of cancers. But if you don't have a military background, if you don't have that type of insurance, because people can go to the VA, right? Go to VA and get treatment. How hard is it to get treatment for these types of sarcomas if you're in the civilian population?
That's a great question. It is very difficult. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And this is also something that makes sarcoma very unique and really shines a light on why we need so much more awareness and why we need so much more investment in research. Because we know, and statistically we can prove this, that patients have better outcomes when they are treated at a sarcoma specialty center. The issue is that there are not very many sarcoma specialty centers across the United States. So we have large parts of the country that do not have sarcoma centers. Also, within states, you may have only one sarcoma center, And that means people have to travel. So whether you're traveling within the state, whether you're having to fly, we have many patients that will fly or uproot their family to be able to go get treatment at a sarcoma center. And what happens is, if a patient is sick, they have an issue, they feel a lump, they have pain, for whatever reason they make it to their local doctor, they may make it to a local community oncologist who's probably never seen a sarcoma patient in their career.
Wow.
And so they don't have necessarily the knowledge to treat a sarcoma patient. And so when you think about socioeconomic factors, not everybody can travel for treatment, even if it's an hour away, even if it's 30 minutes away. It makes it very, very difficult to have access to treatment for sarcoma, which it's not like that for other cancers. And so it creates a unique challenge and a larger burden for sarcoma patients to be able to access treatment.
So Amethyst, when your sister was going through this, how hard was it for you to really kind of first get the diagnosis and then get treatment?
Well, thankfully, it wasn't too difficult for us to receive the diagnosis. We live in the city of Chicago, and most of the clinicians and facilities here are very much exposed to a lot of different rare comorbidities and disease states that perhaps other places are not. So once she actually got the testing, we received the diagnosis probably within 3 to 4 weeks of her last testing. But unfortunately, even with them being able to diagnose that quickly, at the time of diagnosis, she was already late stage 3,
Wow.
early stage 4. And we went and she got opinions of at least 3 of the top facilities in the Chicagoland area. And their goals of treatment and their plans of treatment were pretty much synonymous. So we knew they were kind of spot on, but the cancer is so rare and aggressive, none of the treatment plans were responsive in her situation.
And how hard was that for your family and everybody going through that? Because when one person gets sick, it's not just that person, it's really the whole family and the experience that everybody kind of endures. How did you stay strong?
Our faith in God, like literally our faith in God is the only thing that got us through. She was sick. We all were sick. We all were sick to our stomach. Our last resort, probably about 4 weeks before she died, we literally drove her to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota as a last, sense of hope. And they pretty much told us it was too late. And she came home. She passed away maybe 3 weeks later. But the treatment plans that she went through, they did not respond to the chemotherapy. And then she decided she wanted to do a holistic plan. We did it with her. Everybody in the house was trying to change their body to a more alkaline state. Her dietary restrictions, we adopted them with her. We wanted her to feel love. We wanted her to feel support. And we wanted her to feel that we were going through this together. We are a family unit. When one hurts, we all hurt. When one is in pain, we all in pain. Like she was crying and screaming, and I'm crying and screaming because I can't stand to see her in that much pain. But she was such a trooper. There were many times for many, many weeks, she resisted the urge to put anything that wasn't natural or 100% organic in her body. She resisted the urge to take any type of medical prescribed pain medicines. And for those who can't even think to kind of understand the top of pain of stage 4 cancer, I mean, there's no words to compare. You literally just would hear the travail in her voice from being in pain. And even that, the pain pills really didn't help. They helped subside her body. They helped her to relax. And most times she would be sleeping. But when she woke back up, the pain would still be there.
So, Brandy, what can we do as just everyday people to try to protect ourselves against these types of illnesses? Is there anything that we should be doing as a society?
I think, especially when it relates to sarcoma, because we don't have any real known connections, one of the things that we always tell people is kind of like with everything else, a healthy diet, anything you would do for another disease, a healthy diet, good nutrition, exercise, limited intake of alcohol, those types of things, to just keep your body as healthy as you can. And, it's not, again, sarcoma is not like other cancers and that, there may be some direct connection. But one thing I also wanted to mention, Amethyst, to your point of the treatment is one challenge that we have is that there are very few FDA approved treatments for sarcoma. So many patients either end up on clinical trials, kind of at that I'll travel for the clinical trial because that becomes patient or your treatment, or the only hope that you possibly have. But many patients are treated with either a chemotherapy that was developed 30 plus years ago, or something that is not even indicated in particular for that subtype or that sarcoma disease. So it makes it even more challenging when you are diagnosed and trying to go through the journey of what are my options, even what are the options that we have, but also, as you said, to travel to the Mayo Clinic to see if there's another option and to see if even there's a clinical trial out there that can help. And that is something as a society, and why we appreciate so much, Amethyst, of what you're doing to raise awareness about sarcoma, because the more awareness that we raise, the more we speak out about the unique needs of people diagnosed and living with sarcoma, the more research funding we can get, the more movement we can make in terms of getting treatments to patients. You know, we hear all the time how lonely of a disease, and as you said, a lethal disease. It's aggressive and it's lethal. And the more we can do to raise awareness, the more we can move the needle for people diagnosed with sarcoma. And it's so important to do. So I just want to say thank you so much for what you're doing, because it does make a difference. And as a society, we can do more.
Absolutely.
Now, Tasha, you have a personal story as well about sarcoma. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually a sarcoma survivor. I was diagnosed in 2022 with rhabdomyosarcoma, so one of the subtypes, one of the many subtypes. And for me, my experience in getting diagnosed is what really stands out the most when I reflect on my journey. It took 2 months from the time I had a symptom to the time they figured out that it was a sarcoma. And I was very fortunate that in that time it hadn't metastasized. But, you know, I live in Boston. I live in a city with abundant medical care. I did have good insurance at the time. I had a supportive family, and I constantly think about these factors that led to me getting a diagnosis that at the time felt like it took forever. But in the world of sarcoma, 2 months is actually pretty short. And I had a lot of resources available to me that led to a diagnosis while it was still in the local stage, which is important when it's a cancer as aggressive as sarcoma. And so for me, that sat with me my entire diagnosis and throughout treatment of my fortune, but opening my eyes to, well, that's not the case for everybody across the country. And what about the people who are in my position? And so that kind of is what led me into this work of, you know, helping spread awareness, create better access, invest in research that is going to help find treatments for people. As a survivor, it's not lost on me that recurrence is possible. And when a sarcoma reoccurs, there's often no clear path on what to do next, which kind of speaks to the lack of treatment available and funding that goes into creating more treatments. But yeah, I've had my personal journey with sarcoma, and you know, grateful to be here and hopeful that in all of the work together, we can help more people be here after a diagnosis with sarcoma.
No, I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Amethyst, when you wrote your album, we had the pleasure of hearing it because we had this concert here at the church, at Holy Temple Cathedral. And we raised money actually for the Sarcoma Foundation so they could actually do their work and do the things that they're doing out all around the world. But is there any particular song that's most special to you on this album?
Yes. So that will be a song called Angels. It's actually a cover song, a remake of Richard Smallwood's wonderful symphonic songs. It's very near and dear to my heart. But my sister and I recorded that song about 15 years ago. We never released it. We never did anything with it. And we just kind of left it as it was. And after she passed away, I got with the team of producers and songwriters and said, I need to bring this song to life. I have to have my sister's voice on my debut project. And they worked magic. Them and God, they were shaking their head like, we don't know how we're going to do this because we did not have the original files. I only had a copy of the song, and the original files were destroyed or lost. And so we really stepped out on prayer and faith, and it was a miracle. So I believe it's track number 8. It's called Angels, and the song 15 years after being recorded is now a reality on my current project, An Amethyst Symphony, Amethyst and Angeline, featuring my sister, called Angels.
So we're going to see a tour?
Great question. Perhaps, maybe sometime in 2025. So the rest of this year, obviously, will be devoted to promoting the project and being able to minister the project, get into the hearts and the minds of the people of God. The people of God are everywhere. So I want to travel the world. And so right now we're in the beginning planning stages of a tour, but we hope to be on the road in some major cities real soon.
Wow. Well, I appreciate y'all guys' time. You guys really give us a lot of information about sarcoma and also the awareness. I think if anything we should know about this is that we need to get the word out and get more support around this disease, and maybe get some of our politicians to take a little more serious and a little more, maybe some devoted time and effort and money to try and get more awareness and get better treatments and things along those lines. That's kind of alarming to me that you mentioned, Brandy, that there's sometimes where you don't really, it's experimental, almost like the types of treatments that are out there. They're not really, there's really no course of action that people can actually just point to as a solution.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's very unfortunate, but it is very true. And, you know, there's a lot of research that's being done. I will say there's a little bit more investment in sarcoma research than in the past, but certainly there needs to be more.
So anything like to add, Tasha, to this, to your story as well?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, I'm one of the people who received treatments that have been around for 30 to 40 years. And, you know, my type of sarcoma in particular greatly impacts the pediatric population. So I'm constantly thinking about, you know, how my body as an adult responded to those treatments, and that our children go through that. And I just think for everybody, no matter your age, sarcoma patients deserve more than treatments that haven't advanced in 30 to 40 years. So the work that you're doing to bring awareness and, you know, hopefully more investment in treatment options and more survivors is really important. So we thank you for that.
My pleasure. But I'll be remiss not to ask you this one question about, you guys do a marathon every year with the Marine Corps. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're a charity partner for the Marine Corps Marathon, and we do Race to Cure Sarcoma series all across the country, which we have one in Chicago coming up. And you know, they're really the only place that really brings the sarcoma community together. And it's a place for people to honor their loved ones and for survivors to celebrate. And they're just truly an amazing experience. So we wanted to take that experience and bring that to the marathon level because we have some avid runners. So we partner with the Marine Corps Marathon, and we have a Race to Cure Sarcoma marathon team. And I will tell you, last year I trained for the Marine Corps Marathon. I never ran a marathon in my life. So anybody can do it. Although the Marine Corps Marathon is a little different than most, because if you don't know, they have these things called gauntlets, where others you have to qualify by time. In the Marine Corps Marathon, you have to meet times throughout. You know, it is the Marines, so they have ways to challenge us. But, you know, we have a Race to Cure Sarcoma team, and we really started it to help raise more awareness about sarcoma, and also it raises funds for sarcoma research. So it's a great thing to be a part of, and you know, it's and the Marines are always great to be a part of. My father was a Marine, and my uncle was a Marine. So, you know, it's something very close to my heart as well.
So how hard is it to partner with the Sarcoma Foundation? Do you guys have a lot of outreach and things that you do in order to pull people into your organization?
Yeah, so Sarcoma Foundation America is the largest patient advocacy and research funding group in the sarcoma community. So we are the largest private funder of research, and we also fund research in 12 countries outside of the United States. So really trying to move the needle. We also do public policy advocacy on Capitol Hill. We host an advocacy day every year. As you mentioned, getting our legislators involved and understanding the unique needs that sarcoma patients face. We also provide education to patients, community oncologists. So there's a lot of ways to get involved with the Sarcoma Foundation of America, but we are out there and we are working very hard to improve outcomes. I mean, we were started 25 years ago by a husband and wife whose 2-year-old son was diagnosed with sarcoma. And we had a mission to change the landscape. And we have. Again, there's more work to do, there always is, but certainly we welcome anyone who wants to get involved and help us, help families. And again, Amethyst, as you said, it is a family. It affects the entire family. You have a person going through it, but it affects everybody who is going through it as a whole family and the community of supporters. So we welcome anyone who wants to be involved and help us to raise awareness and change outcomes.
And donate, audience. Go out there, make sure you go to the website, check out their web pages, and get involved and sponsor and buy this album. This is a great album.
Absolutely.
You gotta buy that album. Well, I appreciate everybody's time, and I appreciate all the information you guys have given us and give us a lot to think about, and also something to be hopeful for, because maybe we can do something about this and get some more effort, and from our legislators, and also from this making people more aware of this type of crisis, because it is a crisis.
Oh, it absolutely is.
This is Sean Claiborne with America's Heroes Group. Stay tuned next week. We'll be back again, but make sure you also like and subscribe, and also make sure that you look at all our old shows on our YouTube channel and also americashg.org. We'll be back in a little bit.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Well, market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Information and resources are empowered. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
Hi, Steph.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing okay.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's Wednesday, hump day. So you get to it and you get through it. Yeah. So I called you last week, and everyone, welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable Live Digital Media Show. This segment is called We the People. I know you're like, okay, why is the executive producer? Yeah, I'm doing a segment outside of America's Heroes Group with my own voice, because I was extremely upset last week when I called Stephanie. And yeah, we both was like going at it. I was very, very insulted. I was very hurt. I was extremely felt so disrespected by North Carolina's Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson's. He's a candidate for governor of that state, by his comments of slavery. Wish he could own some slaves. Black. Being a black Nazi, whatever that is. I felt, I can't explain it, but it was beyond hurt, because my family, we're from Mississippi originally. As a little girl in the 60s, I saw signs that said white only. I walked in the back door sometimes with my grandmother, who was a maid, who went to work. I walked in the back door with her. We're talking about in the 60s. Yeah. My mom, especially my father's side of the family, were sharecroppers. They pick cotton because there was no jobs for Black people. The segregation and the Jim Crow and all that, it was beyond what they could, it was beyond their control. So they did the best they could, sharecropping, because it allowed the family to have some place to live. But as a sharecropper, you never got ahead because that was indirect slavery, because all you were doing was just having a area where you could live and eat. But the land you worked, it went straight back to the landowners. So that comment of slavery, of he wished he could own slaves, that hurt me in ways I can't even explain it, because I visualize my family. My dad's side of the family were sharecroppers. They were denied their educational opportunities. They were denied their human rights to vote and anything else. They were denied. So for an elected official who we pay their taxpayers' money, we pay for them, not indirectly from Illinois, but taxpayer money is collected. And then goes to Washington and it's disseminated per state as it's allocated to pay these people's salaries. They have the best health care benefits in the world. So it was at one time, Stephanie, elected officials just didn't say anything because they knew the consequences of doing that was impactful to the point that they could be removed from office. Mm-hmm. Censored, penalized. They just did not do things like that before 2016. So we know that things changed after 2016. The other comment of the Black Nazi thing set me off too. Why? Okay, so my dad's side of the family was sharecroppers. My mom's side of the family, my grandmother's grandmother, father was Jewish, 100%. So that was a double whammy for me with that comment of slavery, wishing he could own slaves, and then Black Nazis. So I'm feeling like if you are entitled, you're entitled to say and do whatever you want to. Okay, go ahead. But not being a tax-paying elected official. You don't have the right to do that with our taxpayers' money. So that's why this segment is entitled We the People, because Stephanie, this must end. Mm-hmm. The rhetoric, the negativity, the prejudice, the hate that's are coming out of these elected officials using taxpayers' money that pays their salaries, their health care, their benefits, their pension. That's a no-no. If you want to say that, if you want to do that, God bless. Help yourself, but do it from a private sector. Do it from private sector. Don't collect taxpayers' money and think it is okay for you to disseminate that type of hate, that type of prejudice, that type of it's not okay for that. It is not okay for that. And I don't give a damn what nobody say. It's never okay for an elected official, be it president on down to local, to spew, to disseminate, advertise, market, or participate in anything that demise another race in any kind of way. What type of person says something like that? What type of person will want to own another person in that kind of manner? I don't understand in 2024 who with a heart of decency would see even your category. Thank you.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize because you are a cat mommy. Yeah, killing it.
Yeah.
But I'm just, who would do that? So Stephanie, when I called you, we both were like flipping the hell out because I couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe that this man had the gumption to even say something like that.
Yeah.
Girl, go ahead, because I was just too hurt. I was so hurt.
Yes, and you're also speaking to somebody. I mean, I haven't always known that I was Jewish, and we actually found out by blood because a family member married a Gentile woman, and it brings another thing as you rediscover yourself. And that side of the family has always been Polish, so I'm not surprised about that. So it brings a new light to things, and it does hit a few chords. But
yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because Stephanie, here to me, here is where it stops.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like that, personally speaking, by the Constitution, you have the right to say that, feel that, be that, whatever. But you don't have the right to hold an elected office, no matter where we are in the United States of America, and display that type of ignorance, that type of hate, you don't have the right to do that with our money.
Right.
Because, sweetheart, we pay the salary. That's we the people. We pay the salaries. Some of us don't have the health care that they have, but guess what? They do. They collect checks. Well, some people are unemployed, homeless, and whatever. So you are privileged to be in a seat, a predicament of that manner. So I think collectively we're going to have to come back together and demand that these elected officials be held totally accountable for what they say, when they're saying it, how they're saying it, and when they're saying it, because you don't need to be in office if that is how you're going to talk to the citizens of the United States of America. We the people.
Yeah.
Bottom damn line. My Jewish cousin, what you got to say, girl?
Oh, goodness. Well, I will say, I'll add a little bit of news to it. So several of his sponsors have actually quit and stepped down from the campaign. And President Trump had gone through to speak in North Carolina again. And he didn't say one thing about Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson wasn't involved. He wasn't talked about, nothing. It seems like the RNC is slowly stepping away from him since these things came out, especially how things are connected. And I'm so glad that the other news people did the investigations for this to find these things. And it's completely unreal to find that this is happening, and this is what this person has said before. So it's been very interesting to watch. And there might be more of a fallout that comes out in the next week.
Well, something else I didn't care for. Yeah. My parents, my auntie, my family from the south of Mississippi, Jim Crow. I mean serious Jim Crow. Yep. Couldn't walk in front doors, couldn't go to school, couldn't do it, didn't have any legal rights as a human being like others.
Could it be true in hospitals, in white hospitals? They would die waiting to find, a black hospital they could go to. It was ridiculous.
Absolutely. And so my family has always conveyed the history and the foundation of what our families endured. Not angry, not bitter, but to educate so we wouldn't forget the struggle by which things have come, privileges and rights and benefits have come. So they shared their stories of when Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King came down to the south of Grenada, Mississippi. My dad shared seeing Ku Klux Klan marching, and he was like, sweetheart, you just don't understand the sight of what that looked like. My dad, mom, aunties were constantly marching, going to jail directly with Dr. King and the other civil rights people who were in that area. One particular incident my mom shared with me, that they were uptown in Grenada marching when the Ku Klux Klan surround them. Dr. King told them, be still, let's kneel and pray. They kneeled and prayed. Mm-hmm. When they stood up and tried to walk away peacefully, the Ku Klux Klan chased them into Bellflower's church. I know exactly where that church is. My grandfather was buried there. My grandfather's funeral was there. Mm-hmm. My mom shared with me that day, that they were in that church for majority of that day until late in that evening. Why? Because the Ku Klux Klan has surrounded that church and threatened to burn it down and kill all of them unless Dr. King came out from the church. True story. So the history of what my family in particular have endured, mm-hmm. that puts the responsibility back on me for me to be a responsible, accountable citizen, productive citizen, to make sure I got all that they couldn't get, from being educated to making sure I'm being a part and contributing to the humanity of society, making sure I'm being respectful and treating people respectfully, and also demanding respect in return. Yep. So once again, it's just and the Nazi thing. I mean, wow, mm-hmm. Wow, that goes without saying as well. Who with a heart, based on the Jewish people, of the suffering and the death and all that they have endured and still endure for no reason, mm-hmm. Who would say something like that? Why would you want to say something like that other than pandering and trying to talk to a base of hate, racism, prejudice, and just to get elected? Yeah. What is the bottom? What is rock bottom where this BS absolutely stops? Where does it end? Because at this point, we, the people, taxpaying citizens, do not have to allow this anymore. Because I like Republicans, GOP, like the late Senator John McCain. I like the late GOP Secretary of State, General Colin Powell. I like Condoleezza Rice. I like Liz Cheney. I like Republican GOP that held that standard, of what their principles were about, and they lived according to what their public policies were. You never saw them spewing hate or prejudice or wanting to cause harm to anybody just to get elected. That was never acceptable. It was never public. It was never because that was just, it was just a no. Back in the time, elected officials had to resign if they were if charges came up, or not charges, but if they were caught with infidelity. I mean, it was just so many. It was just that standards was so high, so they knew if you were elected, you had to live by these principles. You had to live by these standards, or you could not stay in office. So, Stephanie, since 2016, these elected officials are saying anything, doing anything, and it's like a damn free-for-all. Party time. We don't have to be held accountable. We don't have to win. Party time. Say what you want to at the State of the Union. Curse out, scream out. I mean, it's just like, when is this going to end? When are we going to get back to what this country is known for? Our excellence, our standards in our politics, when are we going to get back to what is right? When are we going to not let these people come in office? When are we going to make sure we hold them accountable and let them walk out the door?
Basically, when people finally see where all that anger gets them. I mean, you saw a change in a lot of people after January 6th, and there was a change and a step away from those that had it.
Yeah.
And had seen and been part of those people that had fueled the hate, so then they can get the base energized and going. And a lot of times when that happens, seeing where that gets them can have a lot of people step away from it and not do it as much or so much anymore. There was a time where this hate fuel was also used before World War II. And it was anti-Semitic. It did have a fascist base to it, which is crazy. Nazi Germany did have communications with the people that had been part of those movements. And there were violent attempts on our government before World War II, which is wild. But once World War II happened and we went to war, there was a drop of, yeah, we need to get there was a lot of people that dropped all of that hate and got themselves into the war effort. And especially after very many people saw the evidence of where the fascism got them. Right. Especially with the Holocaust, when they found the evidence and seen everything. There were still Holocaust deniers as early as then at the time. But once people see the evidence of where this hate-based violence gets them, it does have them deflate. But the sad part is we have to get to that point, and we haven't been there yet. And that's the scary part.
Yeah, so I'm like this, to each his own. Mm-hmm. I could care less if you don't like me, if whatever your comments are, you entitled to it. God bless. But what I do not condone nor accept is you as a tax-paying citizen thinking that you're going to use our money for your BS to hold office and cast rhetoric of that type of nature. Mm-hmm. How freaking dare you? And then for this man to be compared to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King by Trump. Are you serious with this piece?
Oh, yeah.
Are you serious? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King died without owning anything.
Yeah.
He was never a glory seeker. His heart was always back into the rights of people, humane, making sure that all rights based on the Constitution was accessible for everybody. So how in the hell could you ever think to compare this man to Dr. Martin Luther King in any capacity? How freaking insulting is that?
It is. I saw Reverend Al Sharpton's response to it on air, and the man almost cursed on air. You could tell that man was about to spit, and he was about to curse. I never saw a reverend curse or get close to it as much as that man. Oh man, it was wild. And I just couldn't believe it with things that have been going on with that. And people have to understand that fascism and different aspects of fascism that people are actually clamoring for is not democracy whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
And it actually can cause a whole lot of negative effects that they would be worried about, that they accuse communists of, because they accuse communists of the extreme. But the thing is that communism and fascism is actually very similar in the laws that they put down on how they control people. There's an actual big, at least the extreme communism that you see, especially when the bad leaders, communist leaders, get in control. It is very similar to fascism. And right now, many are calling Putin a fascist, not a communist, because of the way he's actually ruling. And it's quite interesting, and that could actually explain the reason why the alt-right clamor for Putin and support Russian things, even though the Russians call themselves communists still. It's very interesting when you look at those different aspects of government and try to separate what they're calling themselves and what they're actually doing. And that's really important, is to make that difference between those two as well.
Yeah, and there's no room in America for that.
No.
There's no room in our democracy and our U.S. government. In America, there's no room and no place for that.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that want to participate in that private sector, hey, to each be on. You're entitled. You're entitled to stick whatever in your yard. You're entitled to attach whatever to your house. You entitled to that. I don't have a problem with anyone being who they are. See, because you can't preach it if you're not going to do it yourself. So guess what? You got the right to hate, to love, you got the right to do that. Private. That's why it's called private sector. That's why it's called individual rights based on your liberties and your pursuit of whatever you think your happiness is. But you don't have the right to hold an elected office of the United States of America, local, city, state, or federal, using taxpayers' money to pay your salary, your benefits, your health care, and think you have, and think it's okay. And think it's okay to hold office in any capacity, because it's not. So we the people need to stand side by side regardless, and start sending back the signals of the GOP that we recognize, that we want, the John McCain's, the Colin Powell's, the Condoleezza Rice, the Liz Cheney's, the Adam Zimmerman. Those are the Republicans that we recognize. Mitt Romney and all those. Those are the GOP and Republicans that we understand, that would never, ever participate in something like that.
Susan Collins, I love her as a Republican. She's an amazing person and an amazing senator. And she stands by her values of her constituents, because she communicates with her constituents to find out what they want, what they believe in, and what their priorities are. And to me, that's more important when you're an elected official, to have that communication with your constituents, to go with what the majority of your constituents want and need. That's the important thing as an elected official, not listen to the minority of the entire, especially if the rest of the majority don't agree with it as well.
Absolutely.
It can be really damaging for the whole.
Yeah. So, but, and it's the difference between the GOP before 2016 and the GOP after 2016. There's a staunch difference. There's nothing recognizable about the after 2016 as opposed to the before. So
I would say pre-2012 for the Tea Party. If you go pre-2012, because to me 2012 eased Trump into everything, because that's what fueled all the hate towards things.
Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz and all of them. And that came about because they were determined that Barack Obama would only have one term.
Yes.
So,
they also spread a ton of lies, which also that former President Trump also fueled, because he was a birther and he spread the birther lies. So there's other things, but the Tea Party was what eased the Republican Party into the Trumpism that's going on.
Yeah.
Pre-20.
But at least they still understood it was limits. It was limits. So So Stephanie, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this roundtable. AHG correspondents. We the people. We must demand accountability based on what these elected officials say and do now. There's not a free for all party anymore. If you cannot represent all fairly without prejudice, then get the hell out of office.
Yep.
Stay tuned. America's Heroes Group.
Are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And we're gonna wait to see if my guest, Pastor Emma Lozano, is going to be able to join us. She was having some challenges logging on, but I figured I share a little bit about myself, a little bit more about my story, and why I do the work that I do. It's honestly an honor to share my story, right? As a first generation immigrant who was born and raised in Mexico till the age of 16. I had the honor of serving in the Army and completing 2 tours in Iraq. Those were 2 very challenging years. Today, I'm also a military spouse and a human rights advocate, and I serve as the president for Repatriate our Patriots. I'm also a fierce believer in the power of community service, and that's what America's Heroes Group podcast really brings to our community. Earlier this year, I'm going to share just a little bit about an organization that I'm part of. I had the privilege of attending the Veterans Organizing Institute, where I found my way to Common Defense. And Common Defense is an organization that I believe you guys have heard about. I know the show has hosted one of their leaders a couple of times, and I think they're also due to be on this week. Common Defense, it's really an organization that gives us veterans really a purpose after serving in the military. Is one of many organizations that gives veterans a purpose. Their focus is on advocacy and on helping veterans take control of their communities. Not take control of their communities is not a really good phrase. Take control of what happens in their community, right? By advocating, by continuing to support and protect and defend their rights that we all fought for. The Veterans Organizing Institute really provides a platform of an educational platform that teaches us how to best advocate, how to bring change into our communities, and how to have our voice be heard. Within Common Defense, they have the Latinx Caucus. And honestly, after attending the Veterans Organizing Institute, it was a no-brainer for me to join Common Defense. In a very short amount of time, I found my tribe in advocacy, a group of veterans and allies that really understand that our mission doesn't end when we take off the uniform. Common Defense really has empowered me to raise my voice and fight for the values that brought many of us to serve in the first place. Equality, justice, and democracy. And we all know that with our current state of the country, it's really even more critical, right, to be knowledgeable and understand what our rights are and who really has the authority to implement laws and regulations in the state and the county and the city that we live. Common Defense isn't just an organization filled with incredible people. They're truly amazing. It's like basically your platoon, your company, your squad, right? And it's their Common Defense is a movement that gives veterans like me the tools to continue serving our country by advocating for real lasting change. And I encourage everyone who's listening right now to do a Google search, a quick Google search for Common Defense. Check out their resources, check out their membership and the topics that they're advocating for, right? They are advocating for climate. They're advocating for ceasefire. They have several topics that they advocate for. From holding our leaders accountable to protecting our communities, Common Defense really lives by the principle of to never leave a comrade behind. The Latinx Caucus really has taken on the challenge and has joined our ranks on fighting for deported veterans advocacy and to prevent future deportation. And whether it's fighting for healthcare, defending our democracy, or preventing veteran deportation, the mission is clear, right? We don't stop fighting when we come home. We continue to stand for what is right, and we always do that. I have to commend our host here, the America's Heroes podcast, for really giving veterans like myself a platform to have honest and open conversations about the things that matter to us. Within the Latinx Caucus in particular, they have taken a crucial issue, right, which is close to my heart, and it is to stop veteran deportation. A lot of you may not know that fellow veterans who answer the call of duty and often find themselves exiled from the country they swore to protect and defend. And I have to say that I was one of those persons. In 2018 is when I found out that veterans were being deported. Growing up, I obtained my legal permanent residence. My parents were the ones that did all the applications, and honestly, I was clueless to what immigration laws had or how it even impacted me. And just like so many veterans, we joined the military with the promise of citizenship. And then for one reason or another, their paperwork doesn't get filed or it gets lost in the S1. Some of you soldiers listening know what I mean. Then after they leave the military service, they may have gotten into trouble with the law. From what I've seen, is usually a lot of something relatively minor that will result in a slap on the wrist for most Americans who are U.S. citizens. But just because these veterans didn't file the right paperwork at the right time, they get deported from the country they served in uniform. And I was one of those that was ignorant to this even happening. Once I found out about it, I just couldn't look away. I couldn't stand by and not do anything for my fellow veterans. The military had no problem processing their paperwork to join the service. They did it with me. But somehow we couldn't grant them citizenship. I didn't get it. I obtained my citizenship after I deployed, after I left the military, actually. I served 2 combat tours in Iraq, and one of the thoughts that crossed my mind while I was in the Humvee, waiting for a roadside bomb to be clear, was, if I get captured, will they negotiate for me? Or will they just let me be out here because I'm not a US citizen? So that was probably silly for me to think that, right? Because at the end of the day, I was wearing the uniform and I was a service member. They probably would have, hopefully, see, I still think about that. But the military had no problem in processing our paperwork to join. But somehow we just couldn't grant us the citizenship that they promised. And now, due to an issue or an incident that happened where they got in trouble with the law, they're sent away. Oftentimes, they're sent to countries that they haven't lived in years. Many of the deported veterans actually came to the United States when they were young. We're talking about 5, 6 years old. They don't even speak the language. They have no support system and no way to access the veteran benefits that they've earned. It's really a gross miscarriage of justice. And it's also a double jeopardy. Double jeopardy because when they commit the crime, they don't just pick them up and deport them. No, they serve the sentence for the crime that they committed, and then they're sent to detention, and then they're deported. So it's like they're being punished twice without giving a second chance. Common Defense and the Latinx Caucus are committed to bringing these veterans back and to prevent future deportations, just as Repatriate Our Patriots is to do the same. We are part of a deported veteran coalition that we are committed to bringing deported veterans back. And really, we're working with a broad coalition of organizations like LULAC, which is the League of United Latin American Citizens, the ACLU, and my organization, Repatriate Our Patriots. And it's really about fulfilling the promise that we made to each other, that we would never leave anyone behind on the battlefield or at home. And that's why we're here every day. That's why we find ourselves talking about issues that are important to us and bringing awareness to all of the things that often are not on TikTok or are not on Instagram. But that is just why I am proud to be a member of Common Defense. That is why I am proud to be have this time here, Americans Heroes Group podcast, to just have a space and really bring you guys updates on what's going on in the deported veteran issues, what organizations are joining the fight, like Common Defense, ACLU, LULAC, and many other organizations who are really finding out what it is that is happening, and they are really wanting to change this. And right now, our democracy is at risk. We really have to be mindful and really learn about our candidates that are running for office in our districts and in our states and even with our president, so that we know and make an educated decision, not just on not just on the presidential vote, but within our district and our Senate and our governors, because they're the ones that really control who makes the decisions. If the Senate and the House do not agree, the law doesn't pass. Yes, there is a presidential executive order, but we have not seen that done for everything. And again, another president can come back and get rid of that. So it's important that we pay attention to our local leaders, right? Who is making the decisions about our taxes? Who is making the decisions about the school, about the education, about the taxes that we pay within our community? So as far as an update, I do have a couple of things that I would like to share as an update. We are currently working on sharing that we have found out that there has been a brief that has been put into the DC to actually get rid of naturalization at basic training. This is something that we didn't know had been started. There is currently a signed MOU between the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security, where service members are actually obtaining their naturalization upon graduation from basic training. And this has been very successful. The Department of the Air Force has a great system going on in San Antonio. The Navy is doing a great job. The Marines are as well. And the Army is following the lead as well. So the reasons of why they are filing that case to stop naturalization at basic training blows my mind, especially in this state where we have a recruiting crisis. It is our belief that our Department of Defense secretaries, like the Secretary of the Navy, the Air Force, and secretaries of our branches are not aware that this is happening. And if they are aware, it makes you wonder why. We think this is a political stunt that they're trying to do to hurt the Biden and Harris campaign, because if this passes, it will stop naturalization at basic training, which will leave more service members at risk of deportation in the future. So we are right now currently seeking ways and means to bring this to the attention of the President Harris and Biden administration, to let them know the injustices that are undergoing behind the scenes, because then we will probably have more deported veterans in the future, and that's just unfair. At the same time, we are working very hard at finding veterans who need support in filing their humanitarian paroles before the president elections happen. Reason being is because the uncertainty of, we really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who the president will be. And if it doesn't go our way, it's going to be really scary. Those that look like me and those that don't look like we belong here will really have a target on our backs. They're talking about mass deportations, and that is just not the way to handle things. So because of that, we must prepare. We must prepare and have parameters in place on how to respond if the elections go the wrong way. Another thing for, again, I'm going to mention I am the president for Repatriate Our Patriots. If you don't know about us, you can find us at repatriateourpatriots.org. And you can learn more about our mission, about the work that we've done. And also you can support by making a donation. We are all volunteers. None of us have a salary. And we do this because it's the right thing to do and because we love what we're doing and because we live by our motto of never leaving a veteran behind. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, social media, and on LinkedIn at repatriateourpatriots.org. And please send us a question. Join our mission, join our fight, and learn more about what's going on to our veterans who are not U.S. citizens, but still raise their hand to protect and defend this country. And I don't think we're going to have my guest, Pastor Emma Lozano from Chicago, join us, but we were probably going to reschedule that to have her, as she is the vice president for the Midwest for the League of United Latin American Citizens. She's doing incredible work in Chicago. She's leading several projects and fighting for to keep families together. And many of you may have already heard about her. But she has been doing this advocacy work and the human rights work for many, many years. And she's a very strong advocate there in Chicago. And we look forward to having her in the near future. But again, my name is Danitza James. I go by D. I'm an Army veteran, and I am the president for Repatriate Our Patriots. I am also part of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee for the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC. And I am a board member for the Association of Naval Service Officers, ANSO. ANSO is having a symposium in the Western region on December 2nd through the 6th in San Diego, California. And if you are part of the Sea Services, we would love to have you at the symposium. You can find more information about ANSO at ansomil.org. That is ANSOMIL.org. And thank you again for your time. And we'll hope to see you. I will be back with a different guest in the hour. We'll see you then.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome, market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
Hi, everybody. So I am Stephanie Kalota, Army Reserve veteran. I am here as the Veterans Legislative Voice to talk about some public policy, some new things that's been going on. And today we would basically be focusing on toxic exposures. This one's a personal one of mine. I've known many people who have had multiple issues of cancer, medical conditions that are likely connected to toxic exposures. I myself suspected of some of that as well. And so I am going to talk to you about that today. Most of this is speared by an article that military.com came out with. So I really recommend that you look this one up. It's titled Veterans Not Covered by Toxic Hazards Legislation Wait Decades for VA Recognition, a report finds. This report was actually completed with in cooperation with DAV and the Military Officers Association of America, MOA. And so it's a really great report. You can find it on the DAV's website as well. And there's a lot of really good, interesting information. This actually is kind of inspired by the PACT Act, because that passed 2 years ago, and it had really great effects for many veterans. And not only gave presumptives for VA disability for many veterans, for millions of veterans, it also opened up eligibility for healthcare, so then veterans can get that started, because you can only get enrolled with the VA healthcare in a certain time frame after you leave service. And then so with the PACT Act, they allowed a special time frame for veterans to get enrolled. And so then that way they can go in and start their healthcare and their and that can lead to VA disability, because if the VA has those medical records, it's a lot easier for them to actually use that to then fuel their VA claims. Yes, the VA healthcare system and also the benefits administration are two different things, but it's really helpful that it's all in one place for all of your medical needs. So it's really a good thing that's helped millions of veterans. So this focuses on more than just the PACT Act, because there's still veterans that are fighting for toxic exposure benefits and VA disability, and even just regular health care for things that are not covered by the PACT Act. One very important issue that was not covered by the PACT Act at all was those veterans that were actually covered, that actually had been deployed to what many people call K2. I'm going to butcher it. Karishi Kanahanabad. Yeah, I guess that's how you say it. But it was in Uzbekistan. It was an operational base from 2001 to 2005, supporting operations in Afghanistan. When the military actually stood up a base in Uzbekistan, they actually knew that there was toxic exposures there. There were a lot of issues already known. They still put soldiers there, and there were a lot of people that had came out with a myriad of different medical conditions. It was supposed, many people had advocated for, to include K2 with the PACT Act, but they did get left out. But the VA recently, last month, actually took steps to expand access for benefits for those veterans that served in K2 and their survivors. So that's an amazing thing that has came out for them. But there's other stuff that many people still have not been assisted through with the VA. And that's those that are impacted with PFAS, PFOS, and PFOA. Excuse me. It is a lot of initials and abbreviations there. If you're not familiar, those are the chemicals that are found within firefighting foam. This firefighting foam is what's used to help with those planes on military airports and many other things to help extinguish those flames. The military loves to do training, and so they will set off that foam to simulate or to practice so that everybody knows what to do. And it also double checks to make sure that the systems are operating at full power. So it's a lot of really good information that they're doing, a lot of good training, but they actually found out that there's a lot of damage that PFAS and the other initials, but I'm just going to refer to it as PFAS. There's a lot of damage that chemical actually can cause, because it's one of those forever chemicals that doesn't ever break down, degrade, or go away. Once it's in the ground, they rinse it down, it goes actually into the ground, and it can leach into the water. There are veterans that have actually believed that they had gotten exposed to that, and it can cause a lot of issues, they believe. So in this military.com article, they found that in 2017, a military base called Fort Ord in California was found to have 80 times the maximum amount of several PFAS chemicals set in drinking water by the EPA this year. They had found that out. A veteran that had served there said that they were using that water to prepare food, drinking it straight from the water fountains, showering in it, brushing our teeth. So the exposure to that could be really significant. And the thing is that these veterans that were exposed to these toxic exposures, this PFAS, sure, they can get a lot of their medical issues probably covered by the PACT Act, but if they didn't serve overseas in the locations where the PACT Act is covered, they can have a really hard time trying to get that VA disability approved. The report by the DAV and MOA actually found that the VA takes an average of 31 years to recognize an exposure for an individual veteran after it first occurs, and then establishes a presumptive service connection. And that's a designation by the federal government that eliminates the requirement to prove a military tie. They say this, 31 years. I say that number is pretty high, given off of the average, but then we got to look at the numbers. It didn't take until the 90s for Congress to pass legislation for Agent Orange. In the 2000s, even for a few other conditions, and then 2010s, so that they can include the blue water veterans for Vietnam. Do my math, 40 years or more. So of course, the average is going to really be a lot higher than things in the last couple of decades. So it's a really hard thing to take and a really hard thing to understand, but that means that veterans and supporters of veterans really do need to keep advocating to Congress to get these things approved. There has been some hearings and talks and studies about PFAS, but there hasn't been that much movement, especially after the PACT Act. So it's really important to keep up that communication with your congresspeople to advocate for them. We are coming up with an election, so it's very important to talk to them, talk to the candidates, talk to the incumbents, see if they would be interested in getting that legislation going. You can say hi to baby girl that just passed by. I'm sure she's very interested in this as well. And so it's one of those things that we have to keep fighting for and keep talking about. And we hope and pray that these veterans can get some assistance in some time frame. But let's go over some of the numbers and some of the information here. So one of the things that's also included in this that hasn't been covered in legislation is also something that many people might not know of, and that's Fort McClellan in Alabama, and also near Anniston, Alabama. For those that don't know, Fort McClellan actually opened in World War I, and that's where the Army had their chemical corps. That was their headquarters for decades until they finally closed it in 1999. And the VA has noted and admitted that there were potential toxic exposures that may have included radioactive chemicals, compounds, chemical warfare agents, and airborne PCBs. So there's a lot of other things. One of the other things about around Fort McClellan was also a chemical plant that was just outside, because I believe it was but there was a chemical plant right outside of Fort McClellan that they actually were storing their chemical waste in barrels along a river that could have likely leached into the base as well. The city surrounding Fort McClellan had actually collected a very substantial payoff through the courts because of that action that they did, that illegal action. And so, but when they were trying to figure out where the military should go with this, whether those people that had served on that base and were probably impacted by this exposure, they said, oh, the military, the DOD, the VA, they should take care of them. But they haven't. Fort McClellan, people that have served there and possibly exposed by all those toxic chemicals and everything else that were there, still has not been actually gotten any type of legislation done for them, and which is very difficult, especially since the House representative that represents that district denies that any of that toxic exposure ever happened. So definitely look up who your congresspeople are. Excuse me. And it's very important to understand and know those type of things. One of the other things that not many people know about Fort McClellan as well is that actually used to be the headquarters for the Women's Army Corps, the WAC. And that's also where all of the women in the Army went for their basic training. Every single woman went to Fort McClellan. So up until the late 1970s, every woman in the military, in the Army, went to Fort McClellan and possibly was exposed to toxic exposures, and are likely very many benefits because of that. So I really do want to encourage many people to advocate for that type of legislation to get that moving, so those people can get some sort of relief. There's so back also to the PFAS contaminated water. There are certain reports out there that have been put out in the EPA. They do have reports that are publicly accessed. And so you can look up on a good range of military bases. Airports also has those reports as well, because civilian airports often have National Guard or Army Reserve units stationed on those places. And it can cause a lot of toxic exposures that a lot of people may or may have been exposed to, that could lead to many different conditions. Whew, okay. But I do encourage people to look up that report and look up many other things that they do have on that, and it can actually help many people with their claims process. 31 years is a very long time. That is including on the legislation. For those people that are hoping to try to get VA disability to this toxic exposure, I really do recommend those to contact their congresspeople for assistance, of course, because that always helps. But also try to get as many tests done and find as many studies that you can. There are actually Facebook and other social media groups out there that are linked to these type of exposures. There's one for Fort McClellan, because Fort McClellan also had military police headquarters there too. Men went through basic training there, or their AIT there too. So there's a lot of other places that can be included, that actually you can find groups that people have found their own research and they're willing to share with others. There's also a really great book called, by William Bonk, who runs one of these groups, and he's done his own research to come up with this type of information for a lot of people to understand what the heck is going on with this toxic exposures. And his book is called Exposure: Surviving Historical Fort McClellan. I actually had the unfortunate experience to actually go there, but by that time I was there, hopefully a lot of the reports says that it's now cleansed, it's now safe. I bought my own bottled water and didn't stay very long when I was on that base. So just FYI. There's also other toxic exposures that we need to keep aware of and apprised of. So another one is also the exposure that happened in Hawaii. I believe it was Pearl Harbor, with those fuel tanks that happened with Red Hill. And what happened there was those fuel tanks, the underground fuel tanks, actually started leaking, because those fuel tanks and the storage was actually built, I believe, before World War II. And that can lead to a lot of structural issues. And that's what's happened. The fuel actually leached into the water, into the sources on the bases, and many of the families had gotten sick. There was a huge rash of illnesses that had actually came about through the military families on Pearl Harbor. There was a time where the base commander actually said, "Oh, everything's fine. My water tastes great," without trusting or checking anybody else of whether there was having issues. Thankfully, that did cause a lot of attention with the media and with Congress, and they had hearings on that. Quite interesting that the base commander received an exit award for that. So other people that may have gotten a lot less when they leave and they've actually not poisoned a whole bunch of people can get people pretty salty about things like that. Well, there's other things that can cause other issues, other toxic exposures that many may not know of, and that it impacts military families. And one of those is base housing. Base housing is one of those things that have really caused a lot of issues recently because of the contracting that they have been using in the time frame. So the military contracts that has been going on with base housing, those that are supposed to be maintaining housing on military bases, there have been many companies that have gone into contracts and privatized military housing, and they faced many fines. And there has been congressional hearings that's happened to go over this, because when they're not maintaining these homes, they have a increased risk of mold and many other issues like water damage. And black mold does cause immediate effects for many people. I mean, I've stayed many in a military barracks that had black mold in it, and I would have sinus infections for weeks. And so it was always a very difficult thing. Well, there was also families that kids would get pneumonia. They can cause long-term damage. There are allergies and a lot of other issues. That stuff can also cause impact on their growth and learning disabilities and things that can also happen when there are toxic exposures within the home. So those type of things are really important to keep on top of and to watch out for. Millions and millions of dollars were millions of dollars in fines were laid upon these privatized companies, but they are still keep going on these contracts. So we will have to keep on top of that, because it doesn't seem like military contracted base housing is really that effective, because it can cause even more money because they're not maintaining these homes as they are paid to do. And so they're getting fined, but it just seems like it's a vicious cycle of just a lot of frustration, discontent, and issues with the families. And so it can cause a lot more issues when it comes to retention, because if military members have to worry about their families more than anything, then it can cause many issues. And you may say, oh, well, just, stay off base. A lot of times that is not really available. There are military bases in very high cost of living locations like Oceanside, California, San Diego, Edwards Air Force Base. I can't remember the name of the city outside of that one, but those locations have very high cost of living. And even the BAH that the military receives is not enough to cover for the housing. A lot of times there's only a few $100s left after they spend that on housing itself. And I'm including their income, their actual income on that. And well, you know what, there's a couple, there's parents, there should be two incomes. Majority of, there's a good amount of military families that are one income families because they move around so much. The unemployment with military spouses range between 20 and 40%. It depends on where you go, where you look for the studies and things. And so it can cause a lot of issues for a lot of people. There are actually more military families than you actually can think of that are on food stamps. So if they're on food stamps already before they even get to these high cost of living locations, you can only imagine how difficult it is when they're living in a home that is probably filled with black mold. And that's why it's really important to communicate with your congresspeople about these issues and to keep them apprised on a lot of the things that you see and find out. If you know of people that have experienced these things, please encourage them to talk to their legislators. Just Google, who's my representative? Who are my senators, state senators? It can be a little bit confusing if you're a military family and you're living in one state and then you're actually a resident of another state or district. I say go with the actual district for where the military base is, because those people would have a say on the funds that gets sent there. That is that military base is within their district. They're supposed to own that. They're supposed to take care of the people that are on that military base. So if you contact those people, but you can also contact your actual district, because there are times that people from the actual residence district will also get involved, and it raises more voices up together. When Vanessa Guillen went missing, her family was from Houston, and the military base was in Killeen, Texas. That's miles apart. So those are two separate districts. And I still remember the representative's name, Sylvia Garcia, from Houston, Texas. She got involved, and they can get involved into military committees and try to figure out what the heck is going on and try to advocate for their constituents. They can actually do that. They can request from the chairman permission to be part of the Armed Services Committee or whatever committee that is applicable there, and then they can get involved. That's how they can do that. So when a legislator tells you, oh, I'm not part of that committee, I can't do any of that. No, they can. And so you can actually try to get them fueled on that. If they don't help you, raise your voice, talk about it, go to your local news, talk to other people, other legislatures, try to get some sort of advocacy pushed through. All else fails, contact the ranking member or chairman of the committee that's applicable to your issues. So for people that their district, their actual representative or their senators will not get involved with those things, you can look up the committee, contact and call the office. I do recommend doing their DC office, not their actual back in their district or their state, and contact their actual office and say, hey, I would like to talk to somebody that is in charge of this because I need to speak to somebody about this. If you're not a resident of that legislature, you just call and you just let them know that I'd like to try to get a hold of this person, or at least raise this issue to them as the chairman of such and such committee. And they often do get involved because you're still a person, you're still having an issue, and they try to represent anyone that is applicable that has an issue within the committee. Because often if you as a constituent is having an issue outside of their district, more than likely they have a constituent within their district that is probably having the same issue as you, but they don't know how to do this. They don't know how to contact their legislatures. And that's the reason why I really encourage people to do this, because you're not alone. You're not the only person that is going through this stuff. And it's really important to raise your voice, because often out of 10 people that go through this issue, maybe one person may actually say something. I mean, the number might be higher for the total. It might be, 20 people, only one person will really say something about it. And that's actually really common, because people don't know how to do it, or they don't know if they should or if they could. But I'm letting you know that you could and you should. and you can. And you just got to be able to ask the right questions. And that's what I'm here to help you with that. And know pretty much that these legislators are there for you, and that's their job. And so you need to hold them to that. And if they don't do their job, then they shouldn't be reelected, because that's their job, is for you. And I'd like to remind a lot of people of that, especially when we're coming up on this election. Elections are very important because these are the people that are supposed to help you. That's the reason why they take your tax-paying money, is to help you, to make your lives better and easier, keep your lives going. And so it's really important for you guys to do that and advocate for that. When you call, I always try to encourage this. Be very nice to the first person you speak to, because it's often somebody that is underpaid, probably not paid at all as an intern, and they're answering the phone. They're a college kid, don't know very much. Just say, hey, I'd like to speak to somebody that's a liaison for the military or veterans or whatever that you're having the issue with. And they can forward you off to them, or they can take your information and that person can call you back later. Try to call between 9 and 11 in the mornings, about 1-ish to about 3 or 4. 4 is probably after 4 is too late, because most people try to be leaving or closing up business by then. So just try to stay under 3:30 when you try to call. If you know you want to leave a message, so you don't really want to talk to somebody right away, just call after hours. Most offices have a answering machine still there, so you can leave a message that way. If you need to get it taken care of within the next 3 to 4 months, do not email, do not write a letter. Those things take months for them to go through. So call and leave a message, or just at least call and see if you can talk to somebody, and they should call you back. It's really important to know these things and to keep them actually going, so that everybody can really have a better life. Because if you're going through that and somebody else is likely going through that, and you're actually advocating for them, you're representing them too. So keep in mind for that, because you're not alone on what you're going through. There's many people that are going through this issue as well, but they don't know the way to do it. And so that's why it's so important to push through and to keep going on this. So I want to remind everybody to please look up military.com on the toxic exposures, on how long people are actually waiting, and look up with the DAV. Of course, I lost the website on my actual laptop, so I apologize. So DAV and MOA have put the report out there. Take a good read into that, and it's very enlightening on how things are going. And you can always Google any of the legislation that you may be interested in, or you could try to contact me. My website is VETS, VETS, legislativevoice.org. You can also email me, same thing, VETS, legislativevoice at Gmail. But you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Apologize. I want to say Twitter still. I know everybody still wants to say Twitter. But keep looking those things up. Keep fighting. Talk to your legislators. Hold them accountable. And please register to vote. Many states, the deadline to register to vote is October 5th. People are already voting for early voting periods. Get registered, takes less than 2 minutes, and then go and vote. Go early as soon as they open up, and then that way you can have your voice and you can be part of something that's really big for this election coming up. Okay, guys? I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
To AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Severn, Maryland.
Awesome. Great. So we're excited to have you here on our podcast and to really share with our audience, more about GenVets. I know is really new but I know you're going to take the veteran community by the storm. I am so sure of it. Can you just start by telling us a little bit about you, what got you to this point of wanting to form GenVets?
Sure. So GenVets is new. I am not new. I have actually been practicing veterans law since 2002. I started as a pro bono attorney with the Veterans Pro Bono Consortium. And right after 9/11, my law firm had given us a lot of opportunity to do work giving back to the community, and that's what I chose. And I was assigned an amazing mentor, Linda Blauhut with Paralyzed Veterans of America, and she has stayed with me for all 20 plus years. Even now, I still go to her. And after about another 4 years with the law firm, I decided to go full time, with the Veterans Administration, and I worked for the Board of Veterans Appeals. And I did that for about 4 years, and then moved on and did some contract work with Paralyzed Veterans of America after that, and then went full time in 2016 and joined their Office of General Counsel and stayed there. I ran the National Appeals Office there. I did a lot of training for the service officers there, which I loved doing. Their national service officers are the best. I have to give a shout to all of
they are. I know a former officer there, Mr. Sherman Gillum's amazing. Yes. The work that PVA does for our community is just amazing.
They taught me more than I did for them, and that's what I always would say to them. But I'm still in touch with a lot of them and continue to go to them when I have questions as well. But after that, then I did some work for a private law firm, and I do a lot of work in the community as well. Lots of different local resource community things that I've done. And then I decided in June to start GenVets because the primary thing that I realized I was hearing over the course of the entire 20 years that I have been working with veterans, and this is without fail, is unfortunately, Jen, don't worry. I know it's not you. It's not what you're doing. It's not Paralyzed Veterans of America. It's not whatever organization I'm volunteering for. They're waiting for me to die. And that's heartbreaking because they're not waiting. VA is not waiting for them to die. There are backlogs. There are a ton of things that are preventing claims from being decided faster and things from going, but no one is waiting for a veteran to die. I assure all of my clients. But when you are that person and you haven't either heard from another human being, or you're receiving letters or emails or automated phone calls, that is sure what it feels like. And I completely get it. But it takes a human, it takes me calling and talking to them and explaining that in my own way. And we have our ways of talking and sort of making light of it in the way that you can, and me actually explaining what is going on, because I do understand what's going on, and I can give them context and explain where their claim is, where it is in the processing of it, and why things may be happening the way it is. So when I hear that kind of sentiment from veterans, from my clients, whether they're people out in the community, I start to think over the years, what is happening here? Because on the other hand, I have so many friends that I have made over the course of these years, whether they're judges, they're people within VA, there are other attorneys who are working just as hard as I am to make sure that there are benefits, that there are programs, that there are resources that are out there that are unparalleled to what we had even 10 years ago. There's been the Mission Act, there's been the PACT Act, there is care now that's available to more veterans today than ever before. And the technology, the prosthetics, the things that VA has produced, it is one of the best agencies, if not the best agency we have. But what do our veterans think? VA sucks. And that's pretty hard to swallow when you are working at VA and you're spending long nights and long weekends, and you know that that's actually not what is happening. So I decided that I think what needs to happen is change the narrative. Try and provide a gap where the communication isn't being brought to the community the way that it needs to be. And because I've spent all of this time over the course of the last 20 years understanding from a VA perspective, from a national service organization perspective, from a nonprofit perspective, from a volunteer perspective, even from a law firm perspective, I think I have the experience to be able to explain what is going on, what resources are available, and if I don't know the answer, I know who to turn to get those answers.
Yeah, and that's important, right? With the work that I've seen and what I currently do with my nonprofit, we become that beacon of hope, right, for the veterans who think that somebody is just waiting for them to die, so they're no longer a file on their desk. They're no longer that number, right? Because we do feel that sometimes that we're just a number. We are told that when we're in the military, oh, you're just a number, don't worry, they'll get somebody else, right? But when there's a human on the other side of the phone or in front of you, right, that kind of talks about it in a way that, okay, it makes it real. People are actually working on my case. There's just a lot of challenges, like everything, right? It makes us feel heard. And I think that's what you're given, and that's what you've learned.
Well, so, and the other important thing to understand is that this is a process. VA isn't an agency that is built to, and I hesitate to use the word, I don't want people to take it the wrong way, but to coddle everybody that calls. And I think there is the perception that when you call, you are going to get someone who is going to answer and be able to talk to you and give you all of the advice and listen about all of your different issues. And that, even probably me 10 years ago, like whether it was when I left the board and I was first working and taking clients, I would think, well, that's not fair. They should have told you this, and they should have told you. No. This is not how it works. So what happens is you have all these different divisions within the agency. It is the most regulated agency in our government. So they have all of these different rules that they have to follow. And or all hell will break loose. Okay. And so that's one thing. And if someone isn't complaining here, they're going to complain here, they're going to complain here. And I assure you, it's going to be veterans on this side, veterans on this side, veterans on this side. So you have all of these different call centers. There are HIPAA concerns. There are privacy concerns. One arm can't talk to the other arm without checking with this arm and that arm. When you call a call center and you are asking about your VA claim, someone isn't going to be able to know about your medical records that came in over here and whether this happened over here. And they're not going to be able to tell you about something that's going on this side of VA. The system isn't set up that way. There are a lot of people who think it should all be centralized or it should go to the states. It should be, no, that is also not. It's easy to think in this perfect world that it would go that way. But this system is actually, it's not a bad one. What we need is someone who is able to talk to our veterans, our clients, and explain, okay, who told you what? And first of all, the first thing we need to do is talk and listen. I want to hear what your story is. So Dee, you come to me and you say, Jen, I got out of service, or I'm just getting out of service, or I want to get out of service, and these are my issues. And I listen. Or my family, I have my husband, I have 2 kids, and I spend 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I hear what you have to say. I would get in a lot of trouble. And Linda Blauhood I'm going to tell Jen, we have a backlog of how many cases, maybe. And I would always say, but I write really good briefs and really great IHBs. And they were always long, probably a little too long too, because I spent so much time getting to know everybody. And I love my clients, and that's what I do. But that's what makes that relationship, is what also makes me a good advocate. And it's also why I thought, maybe I'll just start my own organization. I'll get to know everybody, and this will be the solution. And I actually think that's what we're doing here. So I get to know you, Dee, and I get to understand what it is that you need. Okay, you have a claim for service connection. You have disability benefits, but you have 2 children. You've been on multiple deployments. While you were gone, they were having issues in school. They weren't dealing with the fact that you were gone 4 times. Your husband got hurt, or maybe he was having some depression issues on his own. Maybe there's some care that we need to have there. Maybe he was out of a job. Maybe we need to work on some sort of employment issue for him. There are a lot of different things that I'm writing down, that I'm jotting down. But somebody, when you called for your GI benefits, your education benefits, gave you information that doesn't match because there was a change in the law, and you're sure you're entitled to something, and you're telling me you've been screwed. Somebody told you this, and now you are losing out on that. And you're telling me, you know, because the VA call center told you this. So it's my job now to say, okay, we've talked for 20 minutes. I have no problem telling you, I don't have to worry about HIPAA. I don't have to worry about privacy. And at this point, Dee, I hate to tell you, and I'm going to confirm it, but they didn't give you the right information, and you're not entitled to this, and you're not entitled to that. But let me tell you how it works. This is the evidence that you need in order to get that. And I'm happy to tell you how to get it. And we can work on that together in terms of me telling you where you need, what kind of thing you need, what the letter is going to need to say from your physician, where you need to send it, that's no problem. But you're not entitled to that other thing. And please don't waste the time of the agency or take away the resources from your other soldiers, your other veterans by filing a claim that is not going to get granted. You don't have to do that. That's one. As for the education benefit, you got bad info. And that happens. You know, that's another problem with the system right now, is that we have people who aren't necessarily trained the best way. There's so many new people at the bottom level. So a lot of the tension that is happening right now is directed all the way up here at the VA. You know, we're very angry at the board. We're very angry at the judges. We're very angry at all because it's taking too long. It's taking too long. Well, guess what? We have, 2,000 people down at the regional office who have just been hired. I think I heard a statistic of 60% of the regional office are new within the last 2 years. And that is not I'm not vouching for that. I think that's what I heard. But it is a crazy number like that. So if all of those people are new and putting out these claims and decisions like that, we really need to think about, okay, is the training as good as it could be? Are we putting enough into that kind of, because if those claims aren't decided accurately, guess what? You're going to come to me and Paralyzed Veterans of America, and we're going to go, no, even if we don't want to, we got to appeal. And even with the Appeals Management Act and all of the things that are good, that are supposed to get things going faster, we're still going to appeal. You still have to get it right. And even the judges and the board, everybody wants that.
Yeah, and I can tell from what you've shared, right, when your vision of putting the human perspective, right, behind the phone call, having that conversation, that one-on-one, and like actually like telling them, no, you don't qualify for that, but let's take a look at this, right? It doesn't become I showed up, I asked a question, and you shut the door on me, right? You told me no and didn't give me any other option. And I think that that's where maybe you differentiate yourself, GenVets does, from other VSOs, right? That I think that I have experience with some of the VSOs and some organizations, right, that they are so centered on, hey, this is in my wheelhouse, and this is the only thing that's in my wheelhouse, and I'm not going to look either way, even though on the sidelines there's all these other organizations that are the experts at every other thing, right? But because they didn't come to you with what's on your wheelhouse, you shut the door. And like that's where veterans become disappointed, and we become frustrated, and they're like, you're going to send me to other organization that they're going to tell me no. And I've been told no all the time, right? And I love that you are not afraid to ask others if you don't know the answer, right? Because I think that's what we should do. There's an overload of information. There's an overload of resources.
But it's
so
great.
Many
resources. It's a great. VA has all of these benefits. They have the resources. They have all of these things. No one knows about it. Yeah, and that's the problem. It is going unknown. And if you don't know, you don't know. And the problem is not enough know. And it kills me, because I know how hard people are working, and I hate that just as much as these people are working passionately, there are these people, the veterans, who think they don't care.
Nobody cares. Yeah, they don't care.
And they are not willing to hear otherwise. And I want to spend the time making them understand. And you know what? I want them to come at me and challenge me and say, explain this to me, Jen. Explain why this is happening, because I'll find out the answer, and I'll go back and I will talk on the other side. The most impressive thing to me is that when I launched this in Indianapolis, it was in front of the National Association for State Directors of Veterans Affairs. All of the state directors of Veterans Affairs were there. So many people from VA. And they all spent so much time talking to me. People who could have walked by. I'm thinking of one in particular who came back, and he would talk to me. And I would have thought, by now he had enough of me. He was high up in VA, and he would want, and then he brought other people over and said, you need to talk to Jen. And I had my associate Crystal Romero with me, who was also talking and getting the word out. You need to talk to these two because we're going to be working with them. Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, if he says we're working with you, we're going to be working with you. That's the reception we received. And
that's
the
amazing.
opposite of engagement, we are going to bring our veterans to you. This isn't an agency who's hiding from the truth and from what I'm going to be bringing to you all. This is an agency who's saying, thank you. Okay, we have so much to offer. We're not getting it out there all the time. Yeah. And they're trying. They're trying. But when you have the closed off already sort of feeling, and I don't blame them for being closed off. If you're waiting for a decision for 8 years on your benefits, then you're going to be pissed off about everything else. Yeah. And why would you trust and I'm representing a couple clients right now who honestly, at the end of the day, if they don't end up with what they're entitled to, I will cry just as hard as they do, because I don't see how it can't go their way. But when you're dealing with these individual circumstances and these individual people, that's what it is. They're individuals. Every single veteran is an individual. They're not a statistic. They're not a case number. They're people who have individual stories. And we need to hear them. We need to listen to them, because how can we tell them that we have the answer to their problems if we don't know what they're asking? If we don't know what their questions are? Yeah, and size fits all. And that's sort of the problem that I see. It's a perception problem.
Yeah. And like you said,
that perception. We need to make it so that they don't perceive the issue to be that everybody's anti-helping, that they're only focused on themselves and who's arguing. I've likened this a lot to sort of in my mind before I even did this. Before when I was at Paralyzed Veterans of America, I would listen and I would be at these tables and these meetings. Everybody with the stakeholders, they call them, the chairman does a very good job of bringing everybody in to update the VSOs and stakeholders on what's going on in the board, what the statistics are, how many claims are backlogged, how many claims have been decided, how many hearings have been held, so that we know what's going on. We know what to focus on, what's important, what's not. So I would be there and I'd be listening, and I imagine this big table, even though we're all on Zoom these days, I still imagine this table with people. And then I know when there are questions being asked, you can sort of hear saltiness, every now and again. And there are other kinds of meetings. And I swear, I imagine sand being thrown, like little kids in a box. And so what I say about this is we have to stop with the sandbox, stop with the sand throwing. We have to have forward thinking, not looking back at who's responsible for what we got and why we're here. It's about where we're going. And the mantra of our organization is always forward. We don't look back. It's always forward. And that's what you'll see with us.
Yeah. And so that was going to be my next question, right? Like, what are the long-term goals for GenVets? Where do you envision the company and impacting the veteran community within the next 5 years? I know you already have like over 20 years of experience in this field with organizations, with the VA, and doing the work that you're doing. And I can sense you are so passionate about this and so passionate and really care about listening to that person, to what happened to them. And that is often what is missed and what we don't have. Yes, not everybody has the time to sit there and listen to my story, right? But sometimes that's all I needed. I haven't heard anything from anybody in 8 years. And while we know over here that within those 8 years, there were multiple personnel changes, multiple people came and gone, and people learn about your thing or not, did they get trained? But I don't know that. All I know is that my problem has not been solved for 8 years. And I can sense that GenVets is gonna be that listening ear that will not only be honest with them and tell them sorry, you received the wrong information, but let's try this. Let me talk to you about this. How do you see the Gen Bed's impact in the community?
Well, I think for all the things that you just said about how you can't see what's behind the scenes over the course of these years, I wouldn't answer that question, because in order to answer that, I'm jumping beyond the problem of today that's so important, and the only thing that's important, which is changing the narrative today. And until we change that, until we start to hammer away at that, and honestly, I don't think it's the best prognosis I can give about all of this is, if given the right tools, if given the right resources and the right partnerships with people, I think that this is something that is completely doable. It's just we haven't, I don't know if, I'm not going to say I'm the only one who's had the idea. I can't imagine that's true. I'm not that smart. But I can't believe that we can't get this done together. There are too many people who want to help.
Yeah, and
I love and who are supporting me that would want to join me in doing this. And it's too simple of an idea. So not looking beyond the next year and just getting this started and getting this word out and finding the tools to do it, whether it's continued podcasts, talking, writing, I'm originally a journalist, and I love that this is coming out this way first. I will be communicating, and using all of the tools, the writing tools I have. People love to tell me I write too much, I talk too much. Well, guess what? You're going to hear so much more.
Now officially. And I do want to ask, how can organizations join and partner with Gen Beds now, right? And like you said, so that we can all together accomplish this, because I also believe it's doable. We just have to figure out how can we get the word out about all of these resources that are already there. They're being funded, they're available. We just need to let people know they're here. Come and I will help you get there.
Okay, so first and foremost, I am never going to turn down a donation to help fund. We desperately need funding. So please, if you know of that, if your organization can help with that, go to our website and there's a donate now button. Please feel free to do that. That's the best way you can help. But also, Dee, you and I spoke about your organization prior to. I didn't know about that. I look forward to learning more. We've already made plans to do that. And you can call me, you can email me, and there are lots of partners that I have that we will learn together. And that's how this works. I learn about your organization. That makes me more educated, so that when I have veterans who call with issues that then relate to your organization, I get to say, I know exactly who to refer you to. And that's what it's about. I don't need to have all the answers. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's about me knowing who to send you there that's already in existence. It's not about spending more money. It's about being smarter with what's already out there. Veterans nonprofits is big business right now. And I'm not all for that. I think we all need to be very, very careful about who we're supporting, where we're spending our money, where we're donating to, really careful. And I can't emphasize that enough. So when we're supporting each other and we are, as you say, how do you get involved? We need to be smart consumers about veterans too.
I love that. Smart consumers of veteran services. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? I don't need to have all the answers. I don't need to have all the solutions. I have a partner who is the expert at this. Why not reach out and send you to the expert? Why am I going to try to do this? Thank you, Jen, so much.
Our veterans are national treasures, not commodities.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. And of course, what is your website, just so that people can, whoever's listening can follow to your website?
www.genbeds.org.
Awesome. Everybody, please check them out, follow them, and partner with them.
Yes,
we can get this done. We can get this done together. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
G Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
So I'm delighted today to be joined by Chuck Farrer, who is a former squadron leader for the US Navy's SEAL Team 6. He served the US government and intel communities as a counterterrorism and military contractor. Chuck is also a New York Times bestselling author and has reported from Afghanistan and presently covers the war in Ukraine as a host for the Maria Report. We'll ask him to describe that in a minute because that's an incredible resource for understanding more about the conflict. And he's also a special correspondent for the Kiev Post. Chuck, welcome.
Jonathan, thanks for having me. Nice to meet you finally.
It's an absolute pleasure. We're going to cover a whole range of issues, but let's just sort of get that out of the way and describe what the Maria Report is, because when I discovered it, it's an incredible resource for those who want to understand what's happening in the Ukraine war. How do people access that?
It is Twitter's longest running, continuously running space. We are at Maria, M-R-I-Y-A report, R-E-P-O-R-T. It came together as this kind of collective, this sort of anarchistic group of people all around the world. We broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've done so since the invasion started, and we have 24-hour news analysis, cultural reporting from Ukraine. We've also been lucky to have guests from the Helsinki Commission. We have had generals like Ben Hodges and Australian General Mick Ryan. They've all come on and shared their lights with us. I'm very happy to be there, and I do a show twice a week, roundup of the latest developments on the battlefield, and that is called Bullet Points on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
And this is on Twitter, as they still call it, or X, as the proprietor would now like us to call it. And I think what's important here, because this sort of leads into the topic we're going to talk about, it is a bipartisan space. Sometimes you will get some fairly acrimonious debates there, but you have people from both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, Brits, Australians, people from the global South. There's people from all over, all different political persuasions, but the one thing they have in common is their support for Ukraine and a recognition that Ukraine is fighting for its survival, its freedom, its liberty, and the right to practice a democratic existence, something the Russians are trying to expunge and destroy. How important is it that there are spaces like that and spaces like this where people from different political persuasions can come together and actually try to form an objective view on something like Ukraine's struggle?
Yeah, it's really refreshing for me as an American to see people coming together without acrimony. We can have differing opinions politically, but as you said, we are all in for Ukraine preserving its precious liberty and its developing democracy. It's what we all see, and we have a number of hosts, volunteers who all bring their own special expertise to the program, their own points of view. What's fascinating to me is that this shoestring organization now functions like a 24-hour international news network. We get reports directly from the front line, Ukrainian combatants who are on the zero line, humanitarian efforts, political and military opinions from some of the highest levels. It's been an amazing journey. And as someone who started out in college radio a million years ago, sometimes it still feels like that. But we've come a long way. And like I said, we're the longest continuously running space on X, and we're going to keep that up.
And it's incredibly important because what we see now unfolding in Ukraine is, I mean, we were talking about this before the recording started. What's unfolding in Ukraine is horrific and obscene, in fact, and almost everything that Russia does constitutes a war crime. They are sent into Ukrainian cities like Kharkiv. These are incredibly destructive, but you can't even say they're really targeted. They're just sent into particular districts, usually civilian districts, usually almost always civilian districts. So there's very little sort of targeting going on, but hugely destructive. They have a terrible both physical and psychological toll. Russia's doing this day in, day out, and yet we have become almost inured to it. And the mainstream media tends not to cover, unless something really major happens or there's some huge atrocity, it doesn't even seem to make the analysis of the papers. What's your gut feeling there, apart from sort of outrage? How do we turn this around and get people to understand the sheer scale and intensity of the criminality that is taking place?
Well, for example, Russia recently sent one of its more highly developed cruise missiles, and it slammed into a pediatric hospital on the 4th floor. That was not an accident. That was not collateral damage. That was a group of targeteers in Moscow entering the 8-digit grid coordinate for a children's hospital, loading a programmed missile into a strategic bomber, which flew over the Caspian Sea, let that weapon go. And you can't find a more prima facie war crime than slamming a cruise missile into a children's hospital. Every link of that kill chain was an individual war crime. The person who put their finger on the map, identified the children's hospital, wrote down the coordinates, the sergeant who programmed it into the missile, the pilot who flew that operation, the bombardier who opened the bomb doors, everyone is a war criminal. And this hasn't happened once. And you might forgive some people in the West from being oversaturated with it, because that was the 1,500th hospital or clinic that has been deliberately targeted in Ukraine. The scale and the magnitude of the barbarity, it's off the charts. And as we speak right now, neighborhoods in Kharkiv are being slammed with glide bombs. They are targeting apartment buildings. They target high-density urban population centers. And Putin has demonstrated, and we can talk a little bit later about why he does this, but he deliberately targets Ukrainian population centers. He has a tactical reason for doing it, but high on his list of benefits is to terrorize the Ukrainian people.
And all this leads to the idea that Putin, why is he still doing this? Why is it purely for his own survival? Or does he still think, despite all the evidence that we're seeing, does he still think he is winning and can win and can extract some kind of what he would define as a victory from this situation? It's a two-barrel question, because if that's the case, do we have a strategy to persuade him that he is not winning and that he cannot win?
Well, unfortunately, there seems to be a disconnect in the highest levels of national command authority in the United States. Our national security apparatus and our national security advisor constantly worries and frets and misapprehends Russian red lines. Jake Sullivan seems to be a person who fears Russian escalation. I'd ask Mr. Sullivan, if someone is pumping cruise missiles into a children's hospital, how much more do you expect them to escalate? What are you afraid of? We hear constantly about Russian red lines, and even when we don't hear about them, they frame the reporting on the war. To me, the bright shining red line that separates a criminal act from genocide is attacking hospitals. It is deporting Ukrainian children in their hundreds of thousands from Ukraine. That's genocide. Let's talk about the red lines that Putin has crossed and not the red lines that we fear. All that Ukraine asks for are the minimum weapons that are necessary for national survival, and also to protect their own troops and facilitate, rather than defensive combat, the offensive operations that will free up Ukrainian terrain. These are obvious things. Why they don't occur, Jonathan, you have me.
Well, we're going to come to the election in a minute, because I think it's incredibly important to try and listen out and even put the candidates of the forthcoming election on the spot to get them to define what their vision of Ukrainian victory is. But we'll come to those criteria in just a minute, because Ukraine has made an extraordinary move in the last couple of weeks, and that is to mount a counteroffensive on the territory of Russia. And rather than being pinned down by the slow attritional warfare that Russia would like Ukraine to engage in, the non-mobile, extremely intense and barbaric, where it's force of numbers, not necessarily precision, that gives an advantage, Ukraine has created a space where it can execute a much more mobile form of warfare. So first of all, let's tackle that, the Kursk counteroffensive, and what opportunities it's opened up for Ukraine.
Well, I think a decision was made at the highest levels in the Ukrainian command structure that if they were able to create the preconditions necessary for offensive warfare, and I'll just very briefly touch on them, by no means covering them all, you need air defense dominance over your own troops, right, to secure your troops from Russian air attack, and secure your lines of communication and supply. You need the strategic element of surprise, and you're also going to need some modicum of, if not air superiority, then at least air parity, so that your own aircraft can come in and prosecute deeper targets against your adversary. I think they looked at the entire battlefield. They are still fighting what's essentially an asymmetrical fight, and they wanted to attack where Russia was weak and it was not strong. The other thing that the Ukrainians realized, and you just pointed it out, the Russians are not good with dynamic situations. They're not good with fluid battle conditions. They like to grind away at a target day after day. So with all of these considerations in mind, the Ukrainians looked not east, where the locus of combat is, but north. And in one of the greatest military surprises in the 21st century, they assembled all of their troops, upwards of 10,000 troops, including 3 battalions of Special Operations Forces, and they burst across the frontier. And in 8 days, they captured more terrain in Russia than Russia has captured in Ukraine in the last 8 months. So this was a huge move, and it has resonated also in the information space, which was vitally important to Ukraine as well.
And this is, I mean, we'll come to that and its significance for the election, because it seems to have caused an uptick in media coverage of the Ukraine war, but it also seems to have prompted an uptick in people on both sides of the aisle, the electorate in the US, actually sort of changing their views and increased support for Ukraine and for supplying Ukraine. So it's an extraordinary psychological move in that sense, or political move. On the other side, you have a lot of analysts, and we were discussing this before reporting today, hitting record button. You've got analysts even today just saying, okay, well, if you lose Pokrovsk and you gain some territory in Kursk, well, have you really gained anything? Which I think is a complete misreading of the situation. It seems to me that Kursk is a seismic shock to the Russian regime and inflicts a huge blow on Russia's strongman leader, who appears no longer so strong or in control. It may even prompt him to take some desperate actions, such as mobilization. What's your view on these aspects of Ukraine's offensive, which so many analysts seem to be missing?
Well, I think you've named the last factors that piled on in the Ukrainian calculus, and that was, if we punched through Russian lines in Donetsk and we pushed them back 30 kilometers or so, it wouldn't attract anyone's attention. But we've penetrated 45 or 50 kilometers into Russia itself. We've taken approximately 1,000 square kilometers, some estimates 1,600 kilometers, at least in contested territory. And what impressed me, we got to see the Ukrainian Air Force carrying out strikes, aviation strike missions, and close air support over Russian airspace. So much has to change for that to have happened. You had to keep Russian air superiority fighters at bay. You had to dominate the air defense situation. And the cherry on top of the sundae was, it is enormously embarrassing to Vladimir Putin, who doesn't acknowledge this invasion. He refers to it as the situation that has developed, truly Orwellian. But his people, his army, his commanders know they got stabbed and no one was looking. And Ukraine is also digging into this terrain, right? They have no intentions of leaving it. And the longer they are in occupation and the more their combat engineers are at work, the harder it's going to be for Russia, frankly, to take this terrain back. It's been quite enjoyable to watch.
And this is where we come to two key events on the horizon for Ukraine. And now, apart from things they cannot predict, such as the crumbling of the Russian economy, which could happen any day now, we've been saying that for 2 years, but it looks like it's on shaky ground. That's not something Ukraine can necessarily control. But there are two things that are inevitable, and they're on the horizon. One is winter, and the other one is the US election. So how important is the timing of the Kursk operation with these two things in mind? And what you've just said there, the apparent desire to dig in and remain.
Well, the rule of thumb is if you are attacking someone and you want to drive them back, you need at least 3-to-1 numerical superiority. And that is the bare minimum. If you have troops and units that are trained to their utmost, troops trained to a very high standard, and their commanders trained to use all of the units and means at their disposal to conduct combined arms maneuver warfare, then you might get away with 3-to-1. In most cases, you want 4 or 5-to-1 and 10-to-1 at the point of contact. That's ideal. Russia can't really do that. They've shown that they're not capable of conducting large-scale ground maneuver warfare. So if we guesstimate that there are 10,000 Ukrainian troops in the area of Kursk, and it might be much higher than that, Putin's announcement that he has sent 30,000 troops into Kursk, it doesn't mean very much, especially when he said 10,000 of those troops used to be in the Air Force. So we're not talking about a crack mechanized brigade here. Regarding the election, I am afraid that the political class of the United States has totally taken their eye off Ukraine, and it won't come back to Ukraine until the inauguration in January. So I'm truly afraid that no one's really minding the ball here in the United States.
And this is perhaps also reflected in the electoral addresses we've seen. I mean, certainly Trump has surrounded himself with people, or he's been advised to surround himself with people who regurgitate Russian propaganda narratives on a regular basis. There's Vance and the others, and this very much reflects his first administration when he was also surrounded by people like Flynn and Manafort, who were not simply regurgitating propaganda narratives, but there is compelling evidence that they may have been corrupted or in the pay of the Kremlin. So you've got these sort of signals and noises that don't look particularly great coming from the Trump campaign. We know that he himself probably has not formed a view on these things. He's liable to change his mind and be influenced by whoever has just whispered in his ear. So there's a high degree of real uncertainty on that side. On the other side, we've not heard anything that gives concern, but we've not heard anything specific or concrete. So what would you hope to hear from the candidates in the election, specifically about Ukraine, that would indicate to you that they take the idea of victory seriously and actually have some conception of what victory means and entails?
Well, the purpose of the National Security Council and the National Security Advisor, who heads the National Security Council, is to advise the president on military, geopolitical, and security matters. Those are the people that are supposed to give the president the best information to allow him or her to make the best possible decisions. That's just not happening now. And I try to stay as apolitical as I possibly can. But we've gotten to this bad position in Ukraine, frankly, because the commander-in-chief of the United States has not said to his national security advisor or to the Secretary of Defense, do what's necessary to win this war and give me a plan. No one has said that. So observers like me, and luckily I'm out of the Beltway loop now. I no longer have to make a living in the Beltway, so I can say that the emperor doesn't have any clothes on. It's the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, who has taken this extraordinarily timid, if not negligent, course of action. I don't see how the national security interests of the United States are served by a long, brutal, destructive war in Ukraine. And I certainly don't see why we are skating so close to the pond of a Russian victory. What effect is that going to have on European security and American security going forward? Look, we know what Putin's going to do. He invaded Chechnya, he invaded Georgia, he invaded Moldova. He is an imperial expansionist despot. He compares himself to Peter the Great. Jonathan, if I told you I'm just like Peter the Great, you should call 999 and have them come talk to me. But this man has his grubby mitts on the levers of power. He has to be prevented from doing this to any one of his neighbors again. And frankly, look, the war is not going optimally for Ukraine. It's going atrociously for Russia. They've lost close to 700,000 dead in this war, 10,000 tanks. They are much like the United States in Vietnam in 1970. This is a war they're not going to win. But unfortunately, Ukraine still needs a tremendous amount of help, and we need to give it to them.
And this is where red lines come in, because I think what people following the war closely and who have a much clearer conception of what victory is, I think, valid and Ukraine is entitled to demand. One of those things, of course, is to take out and create some sense of security, and for an operation like Kursk to achieve its maximal impact. For that to happen, systems like ATACMS need to be authorized to be in use, not against Moscow and the Kremlin. That's not what Ukraine is asking for, but to take out the Shaheeds and ballistic missiles and the planes that deliver them at the launch points. And many of those launch points are not hugely distant from where Ukraine currently is digging into Russian territory. We're talking a couple of 100 kilometers distance. That would put most of these offensive airfields within range. These permissions, however, are not being provided. In your view, is there any military sense here, or is this entirely driven by some kind of political objective, which, as you say, is kind of opaque and doesn't really have any particular clarity behind it?
Well, I cannot understand. Let me put it this way. 40,000 people go to work in the Pentagon every morning. Everyone there knows exactly what it's going to take for Ukraine to turn the tide in this war. Just two things, and there are a score of things that have to come together, but just two pillars of their military success. One is adequate air defense. One of the reasons Putin keeps attacking civilian population centers is he is forcing Ukraine to take its limited air defense capabilities and pull them back into the cities. What that does is it's pushed this Hobson's choice onto Ukraine. It can either protect its civilians when they sleep in bed at night, or it can protect its frontline soldiers and protect their logistical ground lines of communication and supply. The second thing that Ukraine desperately needs is the ability to strike Russian targets, logistical targets, nodes of command and control, back away from the zero line. And it isn't just the shortage of ATACMS and long-range precision guided munitions. Every day, Russia fires between 30,000 and 60,000 rounds of artillery. On a good day, Ukraine will fire 6,000. Artillery is the king of battle. If you do not have artillery dominance, you are simply going to lose ground. That's Napoleon knew that. That's a gap that needs to be closed. And just those two deficiencies, Jonathan, only air defense and precision strike munitions, it puts Ukraine on the back foot.
And of course, we know the cost of that. We've seen videos from this weekend of the civilian casualties, and some of those images are truly heartbreaking and horrific. And the stories of some of those people who lost their lives. One was a young artist with incredible promise, with her life cut short. There was someone else just simply sitting on a park bench with her pet or out for a jog or something. And then there was a sports hall in central Kharkiv. So these strikes taking place in the middle of the day, in broad daylight, on a weekend, in a site that is known to be frequented by civilians. These are obscene war crimes, aren't they? And we should be demanding from our politicians that they give a clear solution on how to resolve this.
You know, there is a bandwidth problem with international news. They will only cover so much. And besides the lack of prioritization of news from Ukraine, there is a major distraction. And that is the political circus going on in the United States. And we need to push this information from Ukraine a bit farther to the forefront. I'm certain we need to do that.
Well, I can hear the background music there. That probably means we should wrap up our conversation for now, I think. And I think this is the end of the recording. I'm hugely grateful to you for joining us for this episode today. It's been a tremendous pleasure. It's something I've been looking forward to for a long time. And I hope very much that we get the opportunity to do that again.
Thank you, Jonathan. See you again.